Good to go.
Hello, friends. A very warm welcome to all of you. On behalf of ICAI Netherlands chapter, I welcome all of you to another session of ICAI Netherlands chapter. Friends, this webinar today that the ICAI Netherlands chapter has arranged is on a very important topic and very relevant topic in today's world. Friends, as you know, more and more people are getting aware about environmental issues and the connected social issues. And when you look an overall framework, you're looking at the governance that deals with both environmental and social elements into corporates, into businesses. And we are seeing the attention today of all the lawmakers, the policymakers globally, that they're focusing a lot on what we call today as ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance, friends. So ESG, we talk about the audit, we talk about the disclosures, and in today's session, to deal with this very important and very pertinent issue, friends, we have amidst us our own past president of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, and my dear elder brother, Atul Gupta ji. Atul Bhai Sahab, namaskar, and very warm welcome to you, sir. Friends, I'm sure all of you know what Atul ji has done to our profession, the energy, the vision, the milestones he created for ICAI, all of us have witnessed during his presidency of ICAI. Friends, Atul ji is currently a board member of IFAC and sits on board of many important institutions and corporates. So without taking any further time, I request Atul ji to take the charge of this session. And once again, I wish all of you a very nice and enriching session, friends. And as usual, what we follow in our format, we will have our speaker, Atul ji, speak and give a deliberation on the topic. After that, we will have a Q&A session, which will be moderated by Govind Sharma ji, who's the treasurer of ICAI Netherlands chapter. So I request, friends, all of you to please ensure that two elements: one, you are on mute from your side, and two, whatever questions you have, you please put it in the chat box that Govindji can. Atulji, over to you, and welcome again.
Thank you, Vikasji. And at the outset, I convey my gratitude to Vikasji and the entire Netherlands chapter for organizing a talk on the very important topic, as rightly mentioned by Vikas bhai, that the ESG, that is environment, social and governance, which is actually the talk of the day. Everywhere you will find that there is a discussion going on. The commitments are coming from the COP26 Glasgow meet, and then thereafter the various organizations, including the investors, have shifted their vision that how and when we are going to achieve the one or the other aspect related to the ESG. There are the various, I will say, initiative taken by the different jurisdictions that to achieve zero emissions in one or the other activities related to a jurisdiction, that now everybody is innovating, everybody is trying to have the more and more investments in those particular sectors which are fulfilling the need of the ESG. My dear friends, let us discuss and understand what is this ESG all about. What are the global developments in the ESG, and specifically in India, what are the initiatives towards the implementation at the corporate level, the ESG, which we are aware about with the name BRSR, that is Business Responsibility and Sustainable Reporting. So the different jurisdictions, whether it is a TCFD, whether it is European Union, whether it is New Zealand, whether it is Australia or other countries are there, they are all making their own standards own disclosure requirements, and their regulators are implementing them following the various standards laid down either by the GRI or their respective countries. And now, as you are aware, that the VRF, that is Value Research Foundation, is being established, which actually merged the CDS as well as the IIRC and now the SASB. So there will be a new international standard setting board. In terms of the International Sustainability Standard Board is already taken place, and I believe that by 2022 there will be the standards under the building block approach, which also will be available for the international community to follow and integrate the sustainability reporting into their financial reporting. As we are aware, when we talk about the ESG, it's a non-monetary data which we have to integrate with the monetary data. So that is a big task that everybody has to achieve, wherein the IFAC, under the support of the IFAC, the ISSB, that is International Sustainability Standard Board, is working to see that the goal which I'm talking about should be achieved. Now, my dear friends, let me take you a presentation which actually will give you the perspective that what we are trying to discuss here. My dear friends, as you can see from the slide deck, that when we are discussing about the ESG, that the ESG, now earlier this ESG is not a new phenomena, that even in the 20 years down the line, it was being discussed that we should have the proper reporting and our accountability should be there towards the various aspects related to the ESG. That is specifically, it was known as a climate related, it was known as a employees related, which we called as a social. Now, when it was being discussed 20 years back, it was taken as a values proposition, meaning thereby it's a moral value of each and every citizen and the organization that we should be following the ESG. Now, in case there is only a moral value aspect is there, then we feel that, okay, oh, tomorrow I will do this. No, next year we will implement this. Or 5 years down the line, we will implement this. And at times it is being taken that it is not my duty. It is the duty of the government of the respective jurisdiction that they have to take care of the climate. My job is to do the wealth maximization. It is the government who has to take care of the environment or the social aspect. In case the government is lower towards I will say you are aware about the socialistic country. Now, my dear friend, when it was a case that it was being treated as a values only, then the adoption of the ESG was very poor. But now, over a period of time, when the organization start understanding that it is not only the values, but it also have a close connection with the value proposition as well. So we can witness a sharp increase in the adoption of the ESG at the global jurisdiction. Now, if you want to have the investment in your company, you want a private equity, you want a venture capitalist fund, or you want to get your stock listed, or you want to get some certain bonds are being issued, unless and until your company's disclosures are not there on the ESG, you are not getting a good score on the ESG, the investment will not flow. Even if you have the huge profits, the profitability, the EBITDA, the ROI, everything is very good, but your organization is not compliant with the ESG requirement. In that case, you are not going to get the investment, which is we used to call as a responsible investing. So in case the Govind, who is a very, I will say for example, that he is very passionate about the society, passionate about the environment, passionate about the society and the governance, that okay, the company should not collapse overnight, then he will always look towards that, okay, whether this company is scoring good on the ESG parameter or not. Even if the ROI is today good, but tomorrow the company may collapse. They are not following the environmental provisions. So tomorrow they have to pay the huge penalties because of the non-compliance of the environment. So what the Govindji is looking for, that whether the company is scoring good on the ESG, then I will invest. Otherwise, I will not. So it's not only the values proposition, but also it is a value proposition the Govindji is looking for. And that's why the investments are flowing only on those companies which are better performing in the ESG landscape. Now, my dear friend, when we understand that it's not only the values, but the value proposition as well, We need to understand that how it will be ascertained that, okay, which factor is more towards the value and which factor more towards the values per se. As I have given in my slide, when we talk about the social aspect, that okay, rather than I'm starting with the value of environment aspect, I'm starting with the social aspect, which talks about that unless and until that you will not have the values proposition in the social aspect, that is about the reputation of the organizations, how the labor conflicts are there in the particular organization, what is the social impact of certain product and the activities. Ultimately, the company or the organizations will not get that kind of a respect and the recognition in the society which it should be looking for. So what I'm trying to convey you, that if you have the better parameters, if you have the better policies, if the better dissemination of the information is there about the social impact of your product or the activity, what will be the good, like the bad, what will be the side effect of the whatever the products or activities you are doing, or what will be the positive impact on your health or the environment of the product and activity, that actually creates a differentiation that, okay, the whether the company will be recognized and respected in the society or not. Same way, how the employees are giving, I will say, the value to the organization. Because unless and until there are the good policies, there are the good framework which is available for the labor and the other incentives which are there, the company will not get the reputation in the eyes of the employees or the very important stakeholders. So my dear friend, what I'm trying to convey you, when we talk about the social aspect, it is very, very important that there should be the ecosystem around around the world, the social, meaning thereby you should have the policies, you should have the frameworks, you should have the procedures which should be laid down in such a way that you are meeting the criteria of the social, which we are going to discuss in detail in the next few slides. Now, my dear friends, coming to the environmental side. Now, environmental, as you are aware, that there is a natural resources which are limited in nature. There, whatever the activity you are doing, that has a climate impact. And then the demographics are getting changed based on that. So my dear friend, when we are running an organization, when we are doing some activity, whether we are using these scarce natural resources, what efforts we are putting to replace these natural resources which we are using. Say, for example, the groundwater. So whether we are putting the investments back to recharge the groundwater or not, in case you are using the wood, whether we are putting the resources for the further afforestations. But if that is the case, then only I will get the recognition, I will get the investment which I am looking for. Same way, what kind of an impact on the climate change, the different type of, you are aware that the pollutions, whether it is air pollution, the sound pollution, the water pollution. So what is the impact of your activity on the various ingredients of the climate? That is something that is being reviewed and valued by the different investing decisions. Same way, that changing demographics. Now, my dear friends, coming to the governance part. When we talk about the governance, it is being witnessed that the companies are getting actually collapsed overnight. So how the management is performing, what is the board compositions are there, what kind of a policies towards policies of the organizations are there towards the corruption, and how the employees and the other stakeholders are participating in the effective decision making is something that is the benchmark of the governance aspect. So what I'm trying to convey you from this slide, my dear friends, what is the takeaway from this slide is that when you are looking towards the ESG, it's a 360-degree as I will say the overview that what I'm trying to give you, that when you are looking for a ESG, it is not only the buzzwords are there, but you have to devise the policies towards all these three factors, which not only give you the values, but also give you the value proposition so that you will attract the investment in the times to come. So you should have the procedures, you should have the policies around all these three aspects, and that you have to communicate to the societies. Now the annual reports are developing by the organizations, which actually give us special annual reports towards these three factors, that how you are managing these three aspects, and what is the actions you have taken towards achieving the ESG in the real sense. Now, my dear friend, if I will move further, that when we say that, okay, yes, the ESG is very, very important. Every organization should follow. It's not only the values, but it's towards the value as well. You are looking for the more and more investments coming down into your organizations in case you are following the ESG I will say, with this more sincerity. But now, when you want to say, for example, the Vikasji or Govind want to say, that, okay, yes, now Atul, will follow the ESG in a letter and spirit. Now tell me what I have to do. Now there will be the challenges, because when you will say that, okay, I want to implement the ESG in my organization, you have to have the certain methodologies available, that how you will assign the monetary value to the certain quantity, certain aspects which are more of a qualitative in nature. So for example, there is air pollution. Now, when you are integrating the non-monetary data into the monetary data, which I mentioned, that there is a special board which has been established at the global level, that is International Sustainability Standard Board, which is role is to provide that kind of framework that was necessary. So today, in case you want to monetize, if you want to give a monetary value or a quantitative value to the air pollution of your organization, that earlier this was the air pollution, now this is the air pollution, how you will give the monetary value to that particular that aspect, that is something is missing, that is not available to quantify the monetary impact of the reduced air pollution, which you will be able to showcase into your financial statement, is something that creates a challenge before the implementation and the reporting of the one of the aspect related to ESG. Same way, that there is no specific standards which is available for the ESG disclosures, because today in the financial statement, when you report, you want to report a purchase of a fixed asset, you want to you are doing a write-off of a fixed asset, or you want to have an actuarial valuation, there is a standards which are being prescribed, that okay, for this type of activity, this particular treatment will be there, which is laid down in a particular standard. But now when we talk about the ESG, as such, there is no standards per se available, other than these few standards which are being created by some international organization. Now, my dear friend, the third aspect, which is again creating a challenge, that as I mentioned you earlier also, that it's more towards the values proposition which the organization normally see. And then they are saying that it's the responsibility of the regulator and government, it's not my responsibility. But I believe that perception has now been, I will say, no more available. And now the organizations are looking towards more the value as compared to the values from the implementation of the ESG. Now, my dear friend, the another aspect related to the integration or the implementation of the ESG is that the data related to ESG is not available in the quantitative terms. So in case you are doing a greenhouse emissions, you are doing some, there is some strikes are there are the good employees morale is good, you are having the good governance available in the organization. But for that, there is no specific quantitative data available, which you can again merge with the financial statement, which I mentioned you earlier. My dear friend, then there is no theory. So earlier it was that, okay, yes, it's a more a value proposition. I told, Atul told that, no, it's a value proposition also. But Govindji will ask me a question, maybe in a Q&A session, that you are saying that I will get the better investment if I'm a better ESG compliant. But how you will be able to link that? So whether you have any case study that if I will implement the ESG, my financial performance will be better, I will get the money as I'm looking for, or it's only a buzzword that, okay, if I will implement the ESG, I will be getting the better investment and my performance will be better. So there is no case study available to motivate us that, yes, in case you will implement the ESG, you will get a better financial performance will be there, and you will get the better money as well. My dear friend, apart from that, there was another challenge, which is now getting diluted because there was no regulatory requirement. So earlier, there was no regulatory requirement, even in India. It was introduced in 2011. That is the BRR. That is earlier it was called as a BRR, Business Responsibility Reporting, which was voluntary in nature. And that's why only handful of companies implemented that ESG in their annual reporting. But as such, since there was no regulatory requirements, companies were shying away from implementing the same. But now, my dear friends, whether it is the UK, whether it is the EU, whether India or New Zealand, every jurisdiction is now bringing the new regulatory requirements, wherein you have to not only report the financial data, but also the non-financial data in terms of the ESG. My dear friend, the next challenge before all of us to implement the ESG is about the capabilities of the finance team. Because since we are the champions of the financial data, we understand the accounting standard, we understand the auditing standard, we understand the taxation issues. but we normally don't understand. We are not even geared up even enough. The capabilities are the particular challenge is there when we understand the non-financial data, how to measure the non-financial data, how to convert the non-financial data into the financial data, and then report as per the ESG mandate is something that is something required a special capabilities where a lot of research, lot of training, and a lot of efforts are required at the global jurisdiction, at the various POs, that is professional accounting organizations, that how they will inbuild the capabilities among the professional colleagues to understand what is ESG all about. And then the no uniformity of the ESG as well. My dear friend, when you are preparing your financial statement, whether it is IFRS or any other GAAP, there is a comparability that, okay, your data can be compared with the organizations based in USA or in European countries or even the Asia. So you have a certain set of standards which are uniformly applicable. So your balance sheets, your financial statements become comparable with the one or the other reason. But when, unless and until there is a uniformity in the ESG standards across the region or across the organization, the same will not become comparable. So even if you will implement the ESG, and if the data is not comparable, the financial statements are not comparable, the reporting of the ESG is not comparable, how you will evaluate that you performed better or I performed better? So something that, okay, the uniformity across the regions, across the organizations is required to achieve the goal which we are aspiring for. So my dear friend, as we understand that now the ESG is not only the values, but the value proposition is there, but still there are the challenges. There are the efforts put in at the global level. As I mentioned you that the globally, there are the initiatives. Earlier, it was the IFRS Foundation, which was looking towards the sustainability part. Later on, the IIRC, that is International Integrated Reporting Council, then the GRI, then the SASB, all put their efforts to lay down certain standards to report the ESG aspect. And now, as I mentioned you, this IIRC, GRI, SASB, and CDCB, all are getting merged into a new body that is called the International Standard Setting Board, which is going to implement, which is going to lay down these standards. And by the next year, it is expected that the first phase of standards will be available for the professional colleagues. Likewise, there are the mandates which have been initiated by India. Apart from the India, there are the mandates from the European Union, UK has mandated, and the New Zealand also has mandated that for the certain class of companies, the reporting of the ESG will be compulsory from the one or the other date. For example, in India, it is from the 1st of April 2022, the top 1,000 listed companies are supposed to report on the ESG, that is called BRSR, compulsorily in India. Likewise, in the UK, the TCFD, the EU mandates, all are mandating with the different dates that which type of companies has to report on the ESG. And specifically for the New Zealand, it is the financial sector companies which are being mandated to report on the ESG. My dear friend, this is again, as I mentioned you, that the second part which when I was discussing about the uniformity. So in case there are the international mandates are there, but again, I will say the uniformity is a challenge. As I discussed you in just a few minutes before, for example, when we talk about the environment, now there are the greenhouse emissions, there is air quality, the energy management, the waste management, all are having the different standards at the different jurisdictions. How you will have the comparability? How you will compare the data security or the customer privacy from one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction? What kind of employee health and safety conditions which are being provided laid down by one company in India, in Asia, vis-a-vis in Europe? How you will compare the same? So that is something that, okay, unless and until the efforts will not be there to have a uniformity across the disclosure requirements, the purpose of the ESG which we are talking about will not be achieved. So earlier, the sooner will be the better. That unless and until we will not have a uniformity towards the standard disclosure standards, I believe that the ESG, even if will be implemented, there will be always a subjectivity in the evaluation of the reporting, which is done by one or the other company. Now, my dear friend, I just wish to share with you that the global stock exchanges, and specifically the IOSCO, which is the international body of all the stock exchanges across the globe, they are also mandating to the different jurisdiction that yes, we have to have the mandatory reporting by the of the ESG by the listed companies. Right now, 58 out of the 100 stock exchanges at the global level already given the they have already published the ESG reporting guidance for their listed companies. There are the companies like there are the exchanges like Singapore, Malaysia, Budapest, Panama, or even by the SEBI that they have mandate to make it mandatory that what kind, which nature of which I will say the classification of the companies they have to compulsory report on the ESG. They have issued the various type of guides. They have issued the various type of reporting guides or even the framework under which the company has to report. I will touch upon the BRSR in detail once the I will reach to that particular aspect. I just wish to share with you that even the UN global impact, as we witnessed in the COP26 recently, they have issued the number of statements related thereto. My dear friends, this is the few slides which I will try to skip, which I wish to skip, that these are the various guidelines, the sum total of certain guidelines which are being issued by the various stock exchanges at the global level that say, for example, the greenhouse emissions, they are looking that the total amount in the CO2 equivalent for scope 1, which is applicable. So meaning thereby, the as you are aware about the carbon credit, same way, in case of you are emitting the carbon dioxide, then what kind of a value which you have to forego, what kind of a charges which will be imposed, or you have to buy from the carbon credits is something that you have to report in that particular sense. So what is I'm trying to convey you that there are the international efforts to give the quantitative aspect of the non-monetary data so that the same can be reported as well as same can be made compare as well. My dear friends, here I just wish to draw your attention that ultimately the data is the key. So that's why more the better will be the data, better will be the reporting methodology, and how you will get the data is something that we need to understand and I will say the leverage upon so that the better reporting of the ESG will be there. Now, my dear friend, as I discussed you that today we have shifted from a model that the ESG is looked as a values proposition towards the value proposition. It is very, very important to note down as well that there are the large number of initiatives towards the responsible investing as well. Now, the mutual funds, the specific mutual funds related to the ESG is being launched at the global level, including in India, which actually are fetching the very good attraction from the investors because you and me are looking towards the environment, looking towards the climate for our future generation. So unless and until that will not be there, ultimately nobody will be able to survive. So each one loves the kids, each one loves the next generation, that they should be getting an environment which is livable environment. So that's why I am looking towards the investment, wherein the investment will be for those companies which are ESG compliant as compared to the companies which are not the ESG compliant per se. For example, the tobacco companies or other kind of a companies. And that's why the looking into this particular requirements, now the green bonds, the ESG mutual funds, ESG bonds, ESG funds are being are the talk of the town. So that's why there are the large number of funds as well as bonds are being issued by the various mutual funds. You can see that the sustainable funds, they call them the sustainable funds, which are used for the environmental, social, and corporate governance criteria to evaluate the investment. So what I'm trying to convey you that when there will be normally what we are doing that we are looking towards the ROI. Now, along with the ROI, there are the certain ESG criteria. There are the 6 different. I just prepared, developed an article, and that was printed in the ICAI journal. That there are the different type of criteria which are getting plugged, which are factored into the ROI in such a way that your real ROI with the ESG factoring will be reviewed by the companies before getting investment into. So what I'm saying that in case your normal ROI is 12%, but in case I will factor the ESG aspect into that, and then your ROI will become 4%, I will not invest in your company. The mutual fund will not invest in your company. So what is happening that the ESG criteria are getting factored into the ROI or the, I will say the EBITDA in such a way that the real ROI plugged with the ESG criteria is being reviewed by the various funds to see that whether the money should be invested in the same or not. And that's why you can see that according to a report by the Morningstar, the ESG funds took around 51 billion of net flow last year, double the total of 2019, and actually which is more than the aim which was targeted for the earlier years. So there are large number of funds which are getting originated. The mutual funds has started the ESG funds, the green bonds, in such a way that now the investments become the responsible investing. Earlier we used to use the word investing, but now today it's a sustainable investing. It is a sustainable funds. It is a responsible investing, which is the talk of the town. So my dear friends, when everybody is looking towards the, I will say, the factoring into the ESG, let us see that how we have to take a way forward. So what I'm trying to convey you, my dear friends, that in case an organization is looking that yes, it's not the values, it is the value per se as well. I will get the money from the mutual funds. I will get the money from the investors only and only when I will be able to get the ESG implemented in my organizations. We have to develop the 6-step approach. First of all, we have to see the identify, meaning thereby you have to identify the factors related to nature of the organizations, because each factor, for example, I want to work for a greenhouse emission, but since I'm a professional, as such, the greenhouse emission is not a challenge for me, but there may be the large number of papers being used in the photocopier may be a challenge for me. So I have to identify the ESG factors related to my nature of organization, then determine the value of the factor, that or the positive value of the factor, that okay, if I will reduce this much, this way, if I will remove this, reduce this much, this will be the positive value. And then I have to see that who will be the various stakeholder to achieve that particular factor. So what I have to do, that I have to identify the ESG factor first. Then I have to set the overall goal, that okay, today I'm using the 10,000 papers, but now next 6 months down the line, I have to reduce that 10,000 paper to the 2,000 papers per month, so that I will be reducing the 8,000 papers in such a way that there will be less deforestation, there will be less use of wood, or there will be the less cutting of trees will be there. So practically I will be contributing in the environment side. And then I have to develop the goal into the short term and a long term in such a way that 6 months down the line, I will reduce to 2,000 papers. And by the 2 years end, I will be not using, this will be a paperless working in my organization. Same way, the manufacturing sector will have the different ESG factors. The service industry will have the different ESG factor, the trading company, the mining, the electric generation company, everybody will have, even you can see the electric vehicles which is coming up. So every company, every sector will have the different ESG factor based on the nature of the organization, and they have to plan that how they are going to achieve. Now, my dear friends, then since every initiative will require a budget or the finance as well. So in case, say for example, I am a management consultant and I want to reduce the use of the paper from 10,000 to the 2,000 papers on a month-to-month basis. Now for that, I have to invest a lot of money in the technology, because then there will be a paperless working in my organization, and everybody has to move on the system itself. They're using the IT-enabled services. In that case, I need a budget and I have to timelines that, okay, how to implement that particular strategy as well. So that is something that we need to plan. We need to see that how the budget will come, from the money will come, and how I will be able to invest that particular money into the projects which actually will achieve the ESG which I am looking for. And then I have to create a team. I have to create a team which will be working around that particular object, and then I have to see that how they are going to perform in that particular timelines which has been given as per the goals which we have decided. And then you have to define the success, because in case I achieve from the 10,000 to 2,000 or even a 3,000, then it's a success to me. So I have to evaluate the progress on the parameters which is being laid down, and then I have to promote your performance as well. So what I have to do, I have to prepare an annual report. I have to come out of, through my annual report or a financial statement that, okay, this was my target. Earlier, this was the environmental factor which we were negatively contributing to the environment. But now, because of these implementations, now I am an emission-free organization. There is no papers are being used in my organizations. Now I am an environmentally compliant company. Now I am on a social side. my organization is having the more and more happy workers available in the organization. They have the succession planning. My governance is now better. And I have a right composition of the board is there. So you will not find my company getting collapsed overnight. So all these things I have to promote through my annual report or through various papers or the reports which is being released to see that that is getting appreciated across the society, and I'm getting the better investment which actually meet my terminology, that is the values. So it's not the values, it's the value. So that will meet the requirement of the value which I was mentioning from the last half an hour or so. Now, my dear friend, coming to the Indian perspective, that as I mentioned you that the Security and Exchange Board of India, SEBI, recently in the month of March this year only launched a new regulatory requirement that is called the Business Responsibility and Sustainable Reporting. Earlier in 2011, it was BRR, that is Business Responsibility Reporting. But now that is being, the terminology has been changed to include the agenda related to the sustainability as well. And it is applicable on the listed companies per se. So it seeks the disclosures by the listed companies. The entire criteria is being designed around the 9 principles, which I am going to discuss with you. The 9 principles of the National Guidelines on Responsible Business Conduct. So practically, I will say that when you will see the BRSR format, you will find an executive summary of these 9 principles. So what if we have to do? That we have to implement these 9 principles in our organization, and the summary, the executive summary of the same has to be submitted, has to submit before the SEBI in my annual report. So one thing is that we have to create an ecosystem of implementing these 9 principles, and the conclusion of the same has to report to the SEBI on a year-to-year basis. So now when we say this principle, which I'm mentioning about the 9 principles, they are being divided into the 2 parts. One is the essential part, that is mandatory in nature, and another is a leadership part, which is voluntary in nature. So you may or you may not implement the voluntary part, but that is something, it's purely on the organization towards their I will say the responsibility towards the society, that how they feel the responsibility towards the society, they can do the things. Now, my dear friend, it is applicable, as I mentioned you, on the top 1,000 listed companies based on the market capitalization from the 1st of April 2022. And for the first year, it will be a voluntary, that is 21-22, which we are presently following. My dear friend, these 9 principles are also developed based on the GRI standards. In case some organizations which are already following the GRI standards, they can always give a reference of the GRI standards while they are reporting to the SEBI that, okay, so yes, I am following the GRI standard 102 or 105 or 301. And that is equivalent to this principle of the NGRBC. Based on that, again, they are not required to give a separate reporting for the same. And just to share with you that these disclosures need to disclose, the disclosures are for standalone entity. So it's not only that, okay, you have to give on a consolidated basis, but you have to disclose the same on a standalone entity as well. Now, my dear friend, as I mentioned you about the GRI standards, there are the certain GRI standards also. But today we are not going to discuss about the GRI standards. But just to share with you, when we talk about the ESG, there are the 3 series of these standards which are being laid down by the GRI, apart from a management series, a journal disclosure, that the economic related standards, that is governance related standards, falls under the 200 category. The environmental standards falls under the 300 category. And the social standards falls under the 400 series of standards. So when, in case anybody wish to read them, they can always go back to GRI site and they can access based on the which standard they are looking for. For example, I just shared you that when we talk about the 400 standards, the 401 standard talks about the employment, 402 standard about the management and the labor relationships, 403 standards talk about the occupational health and the safety standards, and likewise. So one has to follow all these standards to see whether you are actually following the social side of the ESG or not. But yes, the abridged version of this particular GRI 400 series is there in the 9 principles which I am going to discuss with you, which are being laid down by the SEBI as well. So it will be more easier to implement as compared to the GRI standards, which are very detailed in nature for at least at the initial stage. So my dear friend, when we talk about the BRSR, there are the 2 sections of the BRSR. Section A talks about the journal disclosure. So I will not take your time to explain the journal disclosures per se, because we have a lot of things to discuss in this particular deliberation. Now, my dear friend, this is section B. Now, this section B talks about the 9 principles which I mentioned you. You can see that the first principles talks about the integrity, that how the organizations is working towards the ethical, transparent, and accountable side, how the organization is policies are giving a flavor of the integrity. Then how the business are sustainable. So whether a particular company is there, whatever the goods or services they are dealing with, whether that actually is sustainable and safe for the society or not. The third principle talks about the well-being of employees. So whatever the policies you have, please show me that what kind of a policies you have which are towards the promotion of the well-being of the employees, and even including your value chain. Value chains means your supplier. So it's not only that, okay, the employees, you have to take care of the well-being of the employees, but you have to take care of the well-being of your value chain as well. My dear friend, the fourth principle talks about the various stakeholders. So we have the stakeholder, the society is the stakeholder, the buyers are the stakeholders, even the employees are there, the stakeholders. So everybody is the government, the regulators. So how responsible you are towards the various stakeholder is there in the principle number 4. But I'm discussing with you that these are the disclosure requirements which are being laid down by the SEBI, which are aligned with the GRI, that what kind of a disclosures will be required in the ESG or the BRSR which is going to implement in the next few months. So all these are very, very important, because from here, from all these discussion, we will be able to take away, we will be able to get some takeaway that what kind of a new procedures, new policies, or new disclosures which I have to give in my annual report, and for that I have to be ready with. So these particular discussion will actually give us a lot of takeaway to be getting to implement in the various organization in the next few months. Now, my dear friend, the fifth standards talk about the human rights, that how you are protecting and promoting the human rights. Then the sixth principle talks about the environment, that the organization's activity, the various activities of the organization, how they are protecting and restoring the environment per se. 7 talks about the public policies and the regulatory policies, whether the organizations has a role in the better regulatory and the public policies in the jurisdiction or not. 8 talks about the equitable development, and 9 talk about the consumers, that in case I am producing some goods or I'm manufacturing something, then whether that is good for the society or not, whether that is good for the consumer or not, that give a value to the consumer or not, is something that I have to report, I have to ensure and see that whether it is getting adhered with or not. So my dear friend, what I'm trying to convey you, that this section B, 9 principle talks about the ESG. You can see in these 9 principles, everything is being covered towards the E, towards the S, and towards the G. And now, what is this? What is there in these 9 principles? One by one, I will take each principle in detail. I have prepared an Excel format to explain you that what is these 9 principles talks about, what kind of a reporting requirements in there for the 9 principles, and then how you will be able to implement the same. I'm aware that I have a little ample time available, but still I will request Vikas or my colleagues here that in case you feel that, okay, it's becoming too heavy, then we can stop anytime as per your convenience or as per your guidance, Vikas, that I can stop anytime, because if you feel that, okay, maybe we can do this discussion in a part rather than discussing the one at one go. Now, my dear friend, I am taking you to the Excel sheets because I have prepared some Excel sheets around it. This Excel sheet is visible to all of you. Vikasi,
we can still see the PPT. So
okay, you can still see the PPT. So what I should do, I have to close this and then again reshare. Now you can see the Excel sheets.
yes, it's visible.
Thank you, Govind. Now, Govind, as I discussed you that we were discussing that there are the 9 principles around which the reporting at the in the India is going to be implemented from the 1st of April 2022. So I will touch upon each principle one by one and to explain you that what will be the reporting requirement in the BRSR from the 1st of April 2022. And then I will do a consolidation exercise also based on all these 9 principles that what the organization has to do. I have prepared a checklist as well that what the organization has to follow from the 1st of April 2022 by following these 9 principles. My dear friend, the first principle, as you can see. So the first principle you can see, my colleagues here, that the principle number 1, as we discussed, that talks about the integrity, that talks about how the organization is behavior is ethical, transparent, and accountable. Now, as I discussed with you, there will be the 2 indicators. One will be the essential indicators, which is compulsory in nature. The another is a leadership indicator, which are not compulsory, which are voluntary in nature. Now, my dear friend, every company has to report. Please note down that every company has to report in India. The listed company, the top 1000 listed company has to report. The first part, that is the percentage coverage of the training and awareness program on any of the principles during the financial year. Meaning thereby, they are saying that there should be enough training program, the capacity building program for the board of directors, the key management personnel, the employees other than the BOD and the workers, that what are these all 9 principles talked about. So there should be an awareness program, and unless and until you will not organize the awareness program, because you please try to appreciate that, okay, unless and until these 9, the programs are not there, the awareness programs are not there against these 9 principles, you will not be able to report that as well. So my dear friend, what I am going to discuss with you finally, that the takeaway, that every company should organize at least 4 such training program, which will give that, okay, these are the, which fulfill the requirement of the principle which we are talking about. Then, my dear friends, the principle talks about the detail of the fines and the penalties, punishment, award, or something is there with the organization. So in case the company is suffering with any penalty, any kind of a settlements they are opting for, any compounding fees they are paying or something, then the company has to report as well. So the company has to give a message. Company has to give in the annual report that this is a penalty which is imposed on me because of this reason. That based on that, the Govindji will be able to assess, oh, I want to invest in this company or I don't want to invest in this particular company. So that is something that they are trying to give to the society at large, that, okay, how this company is behaving as far as the integrity, transparency is concerned. And that's talk about the governance part, which we are discussing earlier. And then there is a, they are saying that in case the question number 2 above is positive, you are saying that yes, there are the penalties, then you have to give the detail of the case as well. Then they also discuss about that, does the entity have the anti-corruption or anti-bribery policy. So now in case of a listed company is there, and if they don't have that particular policy, they have to create the policy, and then they have to give a web link of that particular policy as well. Then they have to give a detail of the directors against whom some disciplinary action or the law enforcement agency actions are in relation to the bribery or corruption is there or not. So that is something, a table is there which is being given by the principal, which every organization has to fill and submit to the SEBI as an annexure. Then, my dear friend, these are the leadership indicator, which talks about that not only you have to organize these training programs for your employees or your KMPs, but also you have to organize these programs for your value chain partners as well. You can see the value chain partners as well, meaning thereby the guys with whom you are partnered with. So the guys to whom you are selling your goods or you are buying the goods from there, the raw material from there, that kind of these awareness program may please be organized for them as well. So it's a leadership indicator, it's a voluntary in nature, but the earlier one, which I mentioned with you, discussed with you, they are mandatory in nature. Now, my dear friend, I go back to the principle number 1 and coming to the principle number 2. My dear friend, this talks about that whether the goods or services in a manner that is sustainable and safe. So you are dealing in the goods or services which are sustainable and safe. So now, in case you want to make your product more safe, more sustainable, how much R&D expenditure you are incurred towards achieving that particular year. So that is something that you have to report to the SEBI through your annual report, that okay, how much investment you have made towards the R&D to make your product, your activity more sustainable. How very, very important, does the entity have procedure in place for sustainable sourcing? What is this sustainable sourcing means? Meaning thereby, Govindji, please very, very importantly to note down that the sustainable sourcing means that I am buying the goods, I am buying the raw material from the companies who are also following the ESG, who are also ESG compliant. So in case I am buying certain goods or certain services, I am taking certain goods or services as a raw material or something input from me for my organization, from the companies which are not following the ESG guidelines, then entire purpose will be defeated. So they are saying that does the entity have the procedure in place for the sustainable sourcing? If yes, the what percentage of inputs were sourced sustainability, meaning thereby, if you have a sustainable policy, meaning thereby you will buy from these kind of guys, you will not buy from these kind of guys. What will be the percentage? So on a year end, you have to report that okay, the 70% was there from our guys who are following the ESG guidelines, and the 30% product purchase is there from the guys who are not following the sustainable policies. Then again we have to see that how you are recycling, the reusing or disposing the waste or certain kind of I will say the scraps or some hazardous waste is there or not. So in case, say for example, I am doing some mining activity and I am using some water which is now becoming the waste water, how you are actually disposing of, or in case you want to recycle certain product or you reuse the product, how you are doing the same as well. Then the extended producer responsibility, that in case I'm buying something that, okay, say for example, I am selling the washing machine. Now it's my duty, or I'm selling the laptops or the desktops. Then there will be the e-waste. Now it is my responsibility that, okay, I will buy back that and I will reuse that particular something, that the extended producer responsibility, meaning thereby that, okay, I will buy the same so that it will not be creating a pollution for the society per se. That is something that whether I have that kind of a policies implemented in my organization or not. Then again, there are some leadership indicator, the same things which is applicable on my value chain per se, which is again voluntary in nature. Now, my dear friend, coming to the principle number 3, which talks about the well-being of employees. Now I will take little faster because already it's more than 1 hour and I believe that it will be too heavy for each one of you. So let us complete in the next 15-20 minutes as per the convenience of the organizers, whatever they will say. Now the principle number 3 talks about the well-being of all employees, that you have to give a data that how many employees are covered under the health insurance, accident insurance, maternity benefit, paternity benefit, and daycare facilities. You have to give a data to the SEBI in the table which is being prescribed. Same way, you have to give the data towards the earlier it was related to the higher employees. Now it's about the workers. So you are aware that when we talk about the white collar employees, and then we have a working class who are working in the factory area. So for them also, they have given that, okay, you have to give a separate table for them. It's not only for the employees, but also for the worker as well. Then, my dear friends, they talk about the retirement benefits, that, okay, how you are giving the retirement benefits to your employees, how many are covered under the retirement plan, and so on. And then the accessibility. So you are aware that we have policies related to the right of person with the disabilities, that, okay, how you are giving the accessibility at the workplace for in case somebody is having a disability per se, and equal opportunity policy for the right of person with a disability is there or not. And then the retention rates of the permanent employees. So that's something also will give a picture that how good policies are there in the organization to retain the good number of employees or the labor turnover. So it talks about the labor turnover and then what kind of a grievances handling mechanism. So this is very, very important that every organization has to create a portal, Govind, that okay, every employee will be able to put my grievances over there, and then you have to report to the SEBI or to the regulator that okay, how many grievances received and how many grievances are being settled or something like that is there or not. Same way, you have to report on the in case some union or association is there, how many employees are there, the detail of the training given to the employees and worker. So you have to organize the various sessions towards the health and safety measures, towards their skill upgradation. So how you are investing on the skill upgradation of the employees is something that talks about the social part. So my dear friend, these all are there, which are now which talks about the various social part. So as we discussed, the ESG. So E means environment, which we are going to discuss in the next few standards. Right now, we are discussing about the social part. Earlier, we discussed about the governance part when we talk about the integrity and the transparency in the working of the management per se. Now, my dear friend, when we talk about the principle number 4, as I discussed with you, that talks about the various stakeholders per se, that the stakeholders includes the marginalized groups, talks about the how you are communicating, what kind of a channels you are using, how you are organizing the meetings and something like that. But the more important is about again on a social part. If you discuss the social part, the principle number 5 talks about the social part is talking about the human rights, that how the human rights are being protected for the various type of employees, and how you are managing, how kind of a grievance portals are there or not, how you are redressing the grievances raised by the employees towards the human rights per se. But now this is very, very important. This is environment, Govind. Principle number 6, which talks about the environment side, that how you are reporting and performing in the environment side. So this is a very, very detailed principle number 6, which talks about the electricity, the fuel consumption. Then it talks about the water, that how the water is being used in the organization. Then the various type of greenhouse emissions, last year, current year, that how you are reducing the same, what kind of air pollutants you are spreading from your factory. Last year, how much was there? This year, how much is there? That is something that, okay, then the emissions, various kind of emissions I discussed with you, that the waste management, that talks about. So all these things are there, which are required, the reporting by the organizations from last year to this year. So this is something that, Govind, you will appreciate, that your decision of investing in a particular company will certainly change in case you will find that the current financial year, their emissions are more as compared to the last year. You will feel, oh, this company will not be able to survive because they are not managing their waste properly. They are giving a more pollution to the society. So later or sooner, there will be a challenge on the survival of the organizations per se. For example, I just wish to share with you today. We witness that everybody is talking about the electric vehicle. Now, in case my company will continue to develop the new version of the petrol or the diesel vehicle, whether I will be able to survive 10 years down the line. Nobody will buy the vehicles from me. So that is something that I need to understand. And then I have to invest on the R&D, because that is ultimately the need of the society. So in case somebody will come to you, whether you want to invest in the company, Atul Gupta's company, you will say no, because I understand that his business is not sustainable in nature. So what the BRSR is doing, that actually they are looking for these kind of reports, whether it is a principle number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, that when you will be reporting, then the data analytics side, that the analysts of these reports will be able to develop some metrics or putting some factor onto the ROI, that whether the ROI, the 12% ROI or a 15% ROI, factoring the ESG metrics, whether that ROI is actual ROI or that ROI will reduce to 4% or something like that or not. So based on that, you will decide that whether I have to invest in this particular company or not. Now, my dear friend, after these 9 principles, I just wish to take back to you on my earlier slide, because that will give you the takeaways. So I believe now this is a presentation is visible now again. Govind?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, thank you, Govind. Now, based on this entire discussion of this 9 principle, I just wish to take you on the two, three very important slides, which talks about the various very important message. That the first one, that when we are saying that it's more the values. It's more the values when we talk about the ESG. It's not my role. It is the role of the government to implement the ESG. It's not my role. There is a business case matrix which is also getting developed, that in case you are following the, say for example, you are following the first principle of integrity, ethics, and transparency and accountability, what will happen? Automatically, there will be a revenue growth and the market access which will be available. You will always have able to get the more customers and the business partners of your choice. There will be a good governance practices which will attract the investors, banks, financial market. Even you will get the money more cheaper as compared to, more economical as compared to earlier you are getting. You will be able to attract the and retain the quality employees, something like that. So what I'm trying to convey, that it's not the purely the value, by saying there is a business case matrix which also reflect that in case we are following these 9 principles of ESG, automatically I will be more valued organization in terms of all the in all the terms, whether it is the arranging the finance or the better recognition, image of the organizations, retention of the better employees, and so on. My dear friend, when we discuss about the SDG, because when I say the BRSR or ESG reporting is a business case, it is also a responsibility case, because when you follow the ESG BRSR, it also talks about the mapping with the SDG principles also. So in case you are looking for a no poverty, then the principle number 3, 4, and 8 actually promotes the no poverty. When you follow towards the quality education, the principle number 3, 8, and 9 actually promotes the quality education in the society. When you talk about the, for example, the principle number 2, 6, and 7, that reduce the inequality in the society. When you talks about the, say for example, the water, then the principle number 2, 6, 7, 8, 9 actually promotes the better water facilities available in the society. So what I'm trying to convey you, that when you, Govind, Satyamurthy, and everybody will follow these principles, every organization will follow these principles, automatically we will be contributor towards the SDG as well. So it's not a business case matrix, as I mentioned you. So again, it's a values. But earlier slide talks about the value. So it's a value vis-a-vis the values, which I'm trying to convey since inception of my address. Now, my dear friend, let us see and conclude that on a very important aspect, that okay, what is the way forward? So how we have to now, based on this entire discussion for more than 1 year, ultimately the Govind will say, sir, it's over. Thank you very much. Now we are listening from 1 hour. Please give me the few steps that okay, I have to follow to implement the ESG in my organization. So the next 3 slides will give you that what you have to do. So it is a to-do checklist which I prepared based on the entire discussion and study on the ESG, not only in India, but at the global level. Now, first of all, that the organizations need to organize the awareness program. So every organization who is supposed to report on the ESG or the BRSR in the next year or the next few years, they should organize certain awareness program. For KMPs, board members, all the 9 principles. But for the employees, there will be a requirement to report that whether you have organized the training program on the human rights, health and the safety measures, and the skill upgradation or not. You can see, you can go back to the principles and you can align that, okay, unless and until you will not organize these training programs, you will not be able to report to the SEBI or the any other regulator of the different jurisdiction that, okay, I am doing responsible activity. Same way for the public on the safe and responsible use of product and services. So for the public also, you have to organize some awareness program that, okay, how my product is safe, how you should use my product. For example, you want to create some medicines is there, some oil is there, you have to organize the awareness program. Please don't consume this oil. This is only for the purpose of putting on your body rather than consume along with the food or something like that. So you have to organize these kind of awareness program, which is you have to report later or sooner. Same way, you have to develop some new policies and procedure in place in case that is not there in the organization. starting from an anti-bribery, sustainable sourcing, how you will be able to reclaim the product for the reuse cycle, and the equal opportunity policies, the unions, then the human rights, the zero liquid discharge, waste management, procurement, preferential procurement policies, the conflict of interest, the occupational health and the safety management system, and so on. So all these policies organizations has to develop to report for the ESG, and that all these policies should be available on my website. So this is something that not only I have to implement, I have to report in my annual report as well as on the website of the company that, okay, I am ESG compliant per se. Then, my dear friend, you have to develop some mechanism also to obtain certain data as well. For example, the grievance of the employees, how many grievances were there, and how you have been addressed the same. The data related to grievance for working conditions, health and safety, that you have to report to the SEBI. Then the grievance of community on the social impact and the emissions of gas, air, water, electricity and waste. That is something, the tabular presentation is there in the various principle, which you have to report to the government and the various regulator in the times to come. That unless and until you will not obtain the data, you will not create the utility within your applications in your website or the something like that of the society, the portal, the organization's portal, you will not be able to capture this data. And then if the data is not there, how you will report to the SEBI or the various regulators per se. My dear friends, there will be certain disclosure requirements as well will be there. So you have to disclose that expenditure incurred on the R&D, the extended producer responsibility, the how you are percentage of the recycled and reused input material, the safety related incident, life insurance compensatory packages schemes are there. So all these things are there, including the social impact assessment of the project, environmental impact assessment, that you have to report in your annual report as well. So my dear friend, I just wish to again take you back that you have to organize these type of training programs. You have to develop the policies around these. You have to have the mechanism to obtain the data. And these are the disclosure requirements that the annual report will be looking for. So this is something that the 4 takeaways, which I shared with you, that is something that every company has to implement in the next 3 months time, so that from the 1st of April 2022, you are ESG compliant, at least in India per se, when we talk about. My dear friends, these are the another requirements which are there for the disclosure. So these slides continue from here to this slide as well. And then I just prepared some definitions as well. Now, my dear friend, in case you want to develop these policies, I mentioned you that you have to develop the policy towards the anti-bribery. You have to develop the policy related to the union of the employees. You have to develop the policy towards the preferential procurement policy per se. Now, how the government will be able to develop this policy? That is something, a question which should be answered as well. Because I told you that you have to develop the policy. So what you will do? Whether you will go to a consultant and take the ready-made policy and customize the same or not, or how you will take it forward. So my dear friend, we have prepared a very important metrics as well, that how these policies will be developed. So these are the various laws. These are the various laws. I believe that I try to enlarge, zoom. So now you are getting the zoomed version, that the various Indian laws. So for example, you want to follow the principle number 1. To implement the principle number 1 and the policies around that, you should be having a knowledge of a Factories Act. You should be having a knowledge of the Companies Act, the Prevention of Corruption Act, Competition Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Right to Information Act, Lokpal and Lok Ayukt Act, Industrial Dispute Act, Equal Remuneration Act, Person with a Disability Act. Then I will take you, no, the job is not over. The Right to Fair Compensation, the Protection of Women Against the Sexual Harassment, Environment Protection Act, and the Public Liability Insurance Act. All these acts, one has to read the relevant para and then prepare the policies around the principle number 1. So it's not that, okay, it's a cakewalk. That, okay, somebody will say that, okay, from the 1st of April, I have to implement the ESG. Yes, I will implement overnight. No, you have to read all these law to develop the policies around the principle number 1. Likewise, for example, you want to implement the policy, the principle number 2. So for principle number 2, you have to follow the BIS norms, the Trademark Act, the Design Act, you have to follow the Consumer Protection Act, and then you have to follow the another set of acts, say for example, the Right to Fair Compensation, Environment Protection Act, the Hazardous Waste and Management Act, E-Waste Management Act, and then law in the section B, environmental law. So all these law you have to read the relevant para. It's not that you have to read the complete law. You have to read the relevant provisions which is related to the principle number 2, and then develop a policy which I mentioned you here. I just wish to take you again on that particular slide, that you have, when you are developing these policies, for anti-bribery or sustainable sourcing, you have to read all these law which I am mentioning about to develop the various policies as we discussed. So my dear friend, this is something that I was discussing with all of you, that what is this ESG all about? So just to summarize my discussion, we discussed that today when there is a buzzword, that ESG, that the talk of the town, everybody is discussing COP26, Glasgow, everybody, it is being discussed that ESG, we have to implement the ESG, So it's not that, it's something that, we will go and buy something, the ESG from the market. First of all, we need to understand that today, the ESG is not a values proposition only. It's not only for the moral values. In case you want to attract the investment, in case you want to retain the employees, in case you want to have a recognition in the society, in case you want to have the good reputation, you want to get the cheaper finance. It is something that the mandatory requirement which is being introduced by the various regulatory authorities and at the various jurisdiction, that unless and until you will not implement ESG, you will not report the ESG, you will not be able to achieve that particular objective. Then every investor is now looking that I have to factor the ESG metrics into the ROI. Whatever the EBITDA you have, whatever the ROI you have, I will factor the ROI metrics, and then I will see what will be the net result after the ESG factoring. In case that after the ESG factoring you are performing well, I will invest, and that is called the responsible investing. That is called the sustainable investing. And that's why, to understand this aspect, now the large number of mutual funds has released the ESG funds, the ESG bonds, in such a way that these type of investors are giving money to the mutual funds to invest only on those companies which are performing well on the ESG metrics. And that's why the various regulators have now developing the criteria, the ecosystem to report. I'm aware that when we are saying to report, there are a number of challenges. There are a number of challenges that how you will be able to convert the qualitative information into the quantitative information. How you will be able to merge the non-financial data into the financial data. How you will have the comparability of the financial data of this merged data from one jurisdiction to the another jurisdiction. And that's why the various global organizations decided to merge themselves into a value research foundation under the guidance of the ICAI, that yes, let us develop the global standards. Let us develop the global standards through the building envelope approach to have this reported, to have the ecosystem around that. Following these footprints, various jurisdictions have now decided to introduce the mandatory requirement for a set of companies to report on the ESG, including the SEBI by India. Earlier, up to 2011, it was voluntary in nature, but now it's a mandatory requirement for the top 1,000 listed companies that from the 1st of April 2020, you have to give a report on the format which is based on the 9 principles, that is called BRSR. Now, while these 9 principles are discussing about the E, S, and G, there is a complete background behind the development of these 9 principles, whether it is an international standard or the various laws which are applicable in India. So ESG in BRSR, in the shape of a BRSR, is a customized version for India, looking into the Indian law which is applicable. So now what we have to do, we have to understand these 9 principles, and the takeaway which I shared with you in the 4 or 5 slides, that you have to create certain policies, you have to create certain disclosure requirements, you have to organize some training programs, and for that you have to have the good understanding of the various laws which are working around these 9 principles, so that you will be doing the right things as per the law which is being mandated for. And that's why it is very, very important that we need to pull our socks. We have to pull the gears and see that earlier stage we are getting implemented. We are creating the ecosystem around the ESG. And that's why I mentioned you identify, set the goal, have the budget, put the team, see the success and promote the success, so that whatever the goal we are working for, it's not only the values, it is also the value which is again important, because unless and until you will not able to showcase your success on the ESG front, you are not going to get the money, which is very, very important source for the, I will say, which is actually a blood in the body, like a blood in the body or soul in the body. That is something for the sustainability of the organization, that unless and until you have the investment, you will not be able to survive. And that is something will be achieved when you will be having a better reporting on the ESG with the one or the other name, as we discussed, per se, based on the various jurisdiction. So my dear friend, this was all from my side. I tried to summarize things as quickly as I can. Though the session may continue up to 2 hours, but I believe that the first dose should be simpler as compared to the that okay, we are discussing a lot about, and then it will become a heavy dose for everybody to understand at the first stage. Maybe some other occasions we will organize, we should organize not only at the Netherlands chapter, but as the ICAI as a whole, for one principal separate lecture, one second principal separate lecture, so that we can discuss in detail the each and every principle and the ecosystem around that. So with this, thank you very much to Vikas ji, Govind ji, and everybody. I'm aware that our few colleagues from the international, specifically Satyamurthy ji, who is our past chairman of Nairobi chapter, is also joined us today. So thank you very much for everybody for joining us on this very, very important topic. And thanks to Vikas bhai and Govind ji for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts around this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Atulji. As we are moving to the Q&A session, I request all participants, like if you have any doubts or questions, please put in the chat, or we can also have a real-time session. So you can unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Atulji. So while we are waiting for other participants, only one question from my side, Atulji, is like, I was an impression earlier that only the companies who are working in industry which is impacting eco environment, like chemical sector, power sector, or mining sector, those may be the more impacted. But my myths is now clear now, like it is removed. I understand it's not just about the environment, but it also considered about the business growth, business development, attracting the investment. And I think a lot more understanding has been received here. So, and I really understand the way you explain, not just a principal level and conceptual level, but also going to the operational level, seeing the forms and formats, and also the action plan that is, which is more practical to adopt and to correlate in our daily useful life for the management reporting and financial reportings. So I think this is a really eye-opener, and also it's coming to be a new working opportunities for the CAs. And I really believe that all the participants will agree with me that we have learned something new, because it's something very new is coming and more attracting for the, especially for the investment perspective, growth perspective. So going to be a growth model in the future. So any participant would, do you have any key questions to, then you can speak up.
To answer you, Govindji, that it's not only the chemical organization or a power sector. Even today, this ESG is getting implemented in the smart cities as well.
Yeah.
So it's not only the commercial organization, even in the non-commercial organization, the ESG is the key today. Because the ESG, as I mentioned you, works for both. It's work for the value as well as for the values. So if we have to see that there is a business case matrix which is connected with the values, and then there is a SDG matrix which talks about the values. So somebody is working for ESG because he is working for the values. Somebody is working for the ESG because he is working for the value.
Yeah.
So it's purely on you, purely on the person, that okay, the organization, the person, or the I will say the regulator or the enterprise, that okay, they are more looking towards the value or the values, because everybody have a different set of objective.
Correct. And especially like who are the reporting authorities and responsibilities part, that also something very nice to know. Like this is also coming up with a more formal way when SEBI also involved and everything. So things are getting formalized now.
Yes.
Vikas ji, we don't have any new question in the chat window.
Okay, perfect. Then thank you very much, Govind bhai, for moderation, and Atulji, as always, thank you very much for your always inspiring and insightful sessions. And we hope to be in touch with you. I'm sure the chapter will continue to benefit from your learnings and your insights on critical topics such as what we discussed today. So on behalf of the entire ICAI Netherlands chapter, Atulji, tune to our website, and it's a very nice afternoon and nice evening. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Atulji.
Thank you, Atulji. Thanks everyone for your participation.
Govindji, you can stop the recording. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.